Hello and welcome to this week's reading vlog. I read a total of this many books this week. So as you might have seen in the intro, I did run some errands today. I did not videotape at the hairdressers because I wanted to leave that experience just for me and my kids, but we did run around and grab a few things for some kids' birthdays coming up, so that was a nice time. I am continuing on with the tarot readathon this week, so I will be choosing all my books based on which tarot card I pull for the day. That has been a lot of fun. Still reading Bad Cree. I will update you when I have finished reading that, but besides that there's nothing much to update you on, so I will catch you guys with my next review. Okay, so I just finished reading Gluten-Free Mediterranean. I did like the pictures in it. The photography is lovely. There are a few recipes that I will be trying out. They do just sub a lot of the flour for gluten-free flour, so I'm guessing gluten-free flours are pretty good these days. So basically you can just sub 1-to-1, I guess. So I will be trying out a few and I'll let you know how they go. But I wouldn't purchase this one personally. I'm not going to be buying it. I've just taken photos of a few of the recipes that I want to try out. But yeah, I'm going to probably bake a cake today, so I might videotape that. I might not, but otherwise back to Bad Cree. Hello, I just got back from the hairdresser. I went and got a treatment done because I felt like my hair was really lifeless and dull and dry, and I tried some at-home hair masks, but nothing really seemed to work. So I thought I'd get it done, and I'm quite happy with the result. It feels like it's got a bit of a pep in its step. So I did finish Bad Cree. Now, what I loved about this book was the Cree folklore and mythology and the culture, the cultural references. I liked reading about those things. However, the book itself is like a very tame episode of supernatural. It's like a slightly creepy mystery. I definitely would not call this book horror. I persevered because I wanted to find out what happened at the end. However, there's no surprises. There's no twists and turns. There's no eye-opening, astounding reveal. It's very linear in its progression. The writing and the characters just felt pretty dull to me. I didn't really connect or resonate with any of it, and nothing stood out. So it was a very humdrum read. So it's probably not an author that I would read more from because it's just wasn't my thing. The next book I picked up for this tarot prompt, I chose By a Thread, and I started this at the hairdressers. Guys, I burst out laughing. I read one chapter and then I DNF'd it. So the first chapter starts out in Dominic's point of view. Dominic is a douchebag. He is an A-grade asshole. So this prick walks into this restaurant on his phone, talking loudly, obnoxiously. The lady is trying to get him to be a bit more observant and conscientious of the people around him. He's having none of it. His first thought of her is envisioning him with his hands in her hair while he's banging her. So he decides to call her sex hair in his head. Okay, so there is some vitriolic spewing of words between them. I would not call that banter. It is not banter. It is not flirtatious. It is not sexy. It is a horrible exchange with a dick of a dude. So he then goes and sits down and talks to his mother. In his head, he has this thought. This is the thought that made me cackle out loud. In his head, he's like, I'm an asshole in a Hugo Boss suit whose haircut costs more than this woman's entire outfit. And straight away, Job from Arrested Development talking about his $4,000 suit just came into my head and I started pissing myself laughing. If you've seen Arrested Development, you know. And I'm like, this guy's Job, but less funny and less interesting. I can't read about that stuff. I can't get on board with this guy being the main love interest and having that be his first interaction with his female love interest. It's not cool. It's gross. I don't like it. For me, I need to read contemporary romances that have good or kind people in there getting to fall in love. I don't want to read about a happy ending for this D-bag. He's not going to be endearing to me. There is nothing he can do that can turn around all the stuff that I just heard in his head and the things that he actually said out loud to other human beings. Ain't nothing going to redeem him. So I had to DNF that book. The next book I read was Punderworld, and I picked it for this tarot card theme. Okay, so I love Hades and Persephone. It's one of my favorite Greek mythologies. I have read like this many that I have thought were amazing. Really the best retelling I read, especially a modernized retelling, was a Wattpad story. And I wish I could remember which one it was called because it was amazing and I loved it. But besides that, nothing else has been great. And with this one, there was a lot of me thinking, I'm probably, oh, look who's here. There's Willow. Hey, Willow. I'm not going to like this book. I didn't like lore. I find a lot of modern retellings cringy. You know, they're trying to make them speak like they're teenagers, and these are meant to be eons old gods, and I just don't like it. And unfortunately, in this case, it was another retelling that just didn't do anything for me. Just like lore, I love the illustrations, but I don't resonate with the dialogue and the way the characters are portrayed, especially Hades being this sort of like insecure soft boy. I don't really like that aspect. So unfortunately, this was another bust for me. The next book that I'm going to read for this tarot prompt right here is Yellowface. This is everywhere. Everyone is talking about it. So I think it fits with that prompt very, very well. I didn't love Babel, but this is a very different genre to Babel. So I'm interested to see how this author writes this story and what it's like. So I will touch base with you when I have read that one. Hello. So let me update you on the other books that I've read. So I have also read Yellowface, and I decided to give this 3 stars. Whilst this book does sort of discuss themes like plagiarism, colonialism, racism, bias, especially in the publishing industry, this book was mostly centered around social media. So a lot of it was Twitter wars, so Twitter conversations between people, trolling comments on like YouTube, Goodreads reviews, emails back and forth discussing what they had read on social media. And I just hate reading about social media. I don't like it. It's just a subject matter that I despise. And I therefore didn't really love this book because it was just so heavily focused on chatting about fake people's comments on Twitter. You know, I'm like, none of this is real. Why would I care? The main character is unlikable, and I know some people were rooting for her in the end, but if you were given the opportunity to take physical possession of the only evidence that could out you as being a plagiarist, why would you pass that up? As soon as that happened, I'm like, well, she's an idiot and it's all going to unravel and I don't care. This book was also very meta. Now with meta things, if they've done cleverly and funnily, I love it. However, in this case, I found it very cringy. You could tell that the author probably inserted herself a lot into the character Athena, and I just found it very awkward. and I didn't enjoy it. So this book was very different though in tone and style to Babel. I wouldn't even have assumed that they were the same author if I hadn't have known. But I just didn't enjoy this book that much. It's just not my genre. It wasn't my thing. And yeah, it ended in a bit of a bizarre way. I don't know if they're trying to angle it for a sequel. It was a bit bizarre, but yeah, it wasn't for me, so that's why I gave it 3 stars. The next book I read was The Witch King. Oh, Witch King. So I got an Illumicrate edition of this and I was so excited because this was one of my most anticipated reads. It didn't pan out. The premise was so interesting, but the execution was incredibly dry and drawn out. There was a back and forth done between the past and the present, and I just felt like it made the pace drag so much that it just ruined the book for me. It was just very hard and a tedious slog to get through. And I only pushed myself because I had a special edition of it. It's one of those cases again where if I've got a physical copy of a book that I've purchased, I will make myself read it all the way through. But this didn't do anything for me. The whole cast is morally grey, pretty much. And you have witches, they're called demons, and regular people, and there's magic and power and there's factions, but yeah, I didn't connect to any of it. I didn't care about any of it. There wasn't anything that was astounding or shocking. The world building and the magic system is so complex and dense. It's not easy. I would not recommend this to a beginner fantasy reader at all. You do have to constantly like try and understand what the hell's going on. There wasn't really a romance angle in this at all, so if you're looking for romance, bypass this book completely. So yeah, I didn't enjoy it, guys. It wasn't fun and entertaining or an easy read, so yeah, I gave it 2.5 stars. The next book I read was The Me You Love in the Dark. Okay, so with this novel, I did like the illustrations. You've got a lady, an artist, who's taking residence in a house that is haunted by an entity, and she sort of begins a love affair with this entity who's not so benevolent and is more malicious. So it was kind of creepy. It was weird. The relationship was hella toxic. There was some murder in this, so it fit the prompt really well in that respect. It was gory. It was okay. There's no real substance to the story. There's not a lot of heft. It was just, I guess, an entertaining read about a lady having some sexy times with a creepy ghost in a house, and realizing that maybe it's not all as cracked up as it seemed to be in the beginning. And the next book I picked up was A Curse of Saints. So this one was a library haul that I didn't know anything about, and just grabbed, and I pulled a card that it fit. I'm not gonna lie, guys, I was trying heavily to make the cards fit. I was like shuffling a few, and then I would be like, any of these fit the library books? Okay, and then I found the books for the other cards. This book was, once again, it just didn't captivate me at all. It was about a spy master. There was like a team of 3. And this is where it lost me straight out the gate. This queen has made her sort of trio 20-year-olds. I'm sorry, but how skilled and proficient can 20-year-olds be compared to maybe someone who's been a spy master for 30 years or an assassin for 30 years? Like, I just don't buy it. I don't believe that the best of the best at being a spy master, being an assassin, everything else, are 20-year-olds. Come on, dude. Come on. You're also introduced to love interest straight away, which is like a hate to love situation. They're not enemies. They just don't like each other. And it's like, why though? Why don't you like him? Because he's arrogant? I don't know. I didn't like it. It was a bit, the main character was once again very arrogant and obstinate and believes that she's just better than everybody and has an attitude. And I'm just over that kind of main character where I don't feel like they're talented enough to back these negative sort of traits up. And I just found her just so churlish and childish and irritating, to be honest. There's a war and there's like, you know, deception and all these things. I just don't like talking about books that I don't care about. I think I gave this 2 stars. It was just so lackluster. I was underwhelmed with it. I won't remember any of these characters. I don't even remember the name of the chick. I know the dude's name as well. I'm not going to remember any of them next week. Like, that's how forgettable this entire book was. There was nothing about it that stood out, except that it was too long. I'm just getting really tired of these very big tomes where they don't need to be that long. They could do with some editing, some conciseness, so that you can improve the pacing and not overwhelm people with superfluous information that they don't need, you know. So yeah, that was Curse of the Saints. So I'm currently reading, so the next book I read was In an Absent Dream. So this is the 4th book in the Wayward Children series by Seanan mcguire, and I think it's going to be my last. It was really depressing. This one was really depressing. So in this tale, you have a girl who once again wants to leave home, and she goes to a world. I think this is one of the more logic worlds. And in this world, it's a goblin market, and everyone barters based on fair value. So, and if you take more than you give, so if in the bargain you haven't really given fair value, then you start to become a bird. And some people become birds permanently, and then some people have to sort of work off the debt that they have accumulated by not giving fair value. So the girl goes into this world, true names have power, so she calls herself by her surname, which is Lundy. She's meant to be 10. She doesn't read as 10 at all. She seems far older than 10 to be sort of making these decisions. And anyway, she befriends a girl named Moon, and they strike up a friendship. And they also end up under the care of the archivist, who becomes like a motherly figure. So the world is interesting, as always in Seanan mcguire's books. All of these worlds are fascinating. She has beautiful writing, and she has these poignant phrases and sayings always. I'm like, oh wow, that sentence hits. However, there's always something missing for me. And in this one, this book ended up being depressing and really sad. And it irritated me. So Lundy does go back and forth between the worlds and her world. And she's sort of torn because she has a younger sister who wants her to stay with her, but she doesn't feel like she belongs in that world. She feels like she belongs in the goblin market world. And also her friendship with Moon, I didn't feel like it was healthy. So every time Lundy would leave, Moon would go on like a spree of just accumulating debt and being silly, and then turn herself almost all the way into a bird. So then Lundy would have to come back and work off her friend's debt. So I didn't like that dynamic. I didn't feel like that was a healthy exchange. And I was just frustrated for Lundy. Lundy really did not get any sort of good fortune her way. And she got real hard done by. And I didn't like that. So it sort of left me feeling really upset and annoyed. And I think I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, as much as I love her writing and her world building and her characters, these stories just aren't delivering enough for me. I've never rated them 5 stars. There's always something missing. And I'm like, I've read 4 now. It hasn't gotten better in terms of my ratings of them. So it's time to move on from this world. The next books that I'm reading, so there's 2 that I've lined up because I'm sort of wanting to swap in between them. So one is The Book That Wouldn't Burn. And this is sort of like a sci-fi fantasy book. This is a thick boy. And because of that, I was like, let's put something in there in case this is getting a bit too much and I need something light. And the other one is Mr. Wrong Number. So those are the 2 books that I'm probably going to finish off my week with. But I will let you know when I've read them. So today is Thursday. It's my Date Myself day. I'm not feeling great, guys. Like, I'm just a bit exhausted. And I'm having a bit of a lower mental health week. You know, when you have those weeks and you're just feeling a bit melancholic, a bit sort of out of sorts, off kilter, thinking like, what am I doing with my life? Those sorts of feelings. I've been toying whether or not to chat to people again to see if I should start dating again. I'm sort of like second guessing everything and just unsure of what steps to take and what path to be on. And I probably should consult my tarot cards, but I'm even feeling ennui with that. Like, I'm not reaching for them. So I am going to force myself out of the house. I think I just need a change of scenery and energy because I am stagnating a little bit. It is also the season of winter. This tends to happen to me. So I'll see how we go. Like I said, I'm still touch and go. I'm telling myself go out, but I'm also like, stay home. I also had an issue with my car this week. It was leaking. So all of this water just poured into my car, and then my car molded. It just became moldy. My ex-partner has fixed the leak, so at least there won't be new water coming in, and they pressure washed everything. But because it's winter and it's cold and raining, I can't air out my car. Like, I can't open the doors and let it air out. I tried yesterday, and then there was a downpour of rain naturally, and I had to run outside, and like all this water had come into my car again, and I'm like, whoa, no. And then I sat there with a hairdryer to try and dry it, and I got my hair like caught in the hairdryer twice. I totally chewed up my hair, but it wasn't really drying it out, and it would have taken hours and hours and hours. I'm like, this is not a good use of electricity and my time. So I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get this car dry. There is supposed to be some sunny weather tomorrow at least, but it smells so bad. The mildew smell is awful, and I don't know if the mold's going back and we're gonna have to wash it again and then dry it out hopefully tomorrow. But yeah, this is just not the time to have a wet car, my dudes. So that's not helping, I guess, to my happiness levels. But you know, that's life. Life always has its challenges, its, you know, dips, its valleys, and I'm just going through a valley at the moment. I'm sure I'll be peaking in no time again. So just got to get myself through it. But yeah, I've also been crocheting a lot, and I'm hurting my elbows again. So I'm like, stop the crochet and find something else to do. So I probably have read more than usual this week because I've just got not a lot else to do besides work, you know, for my leisure at the moment. But I'll catch you guys later. Hello, let me update you on the rest of the books I read. So the next book I read was Mr. Wrong Number. Oh boy, okay, so it started off really good with a guy texting a girl saying, what are you wearing? And Liv replies with, your mother's wedding dress and her favorite thong. And I did chuckle out loud. So in the beginning, I was enjoying the premise, but as you read, it turns out that Liv is the worst. So she's basically burned down her apartment, and her brother's friend who owns the apartment is allowing her to be there for a month for free. Very generous of him. How does she repay that generosity? Horribly. So this woman goes and eats his food and drinks his alcohol without asking, sleeps on his bed when he's not home, invites guests over without him knowing, jumps on his sofa, breaks multiple objects of his, and when he calls her out on any of this stuff, she has the audacity not to apologize, which is what she should be doing, but to insult and berate him. What kind of idiot buys $400 tequila when she's opened what he bought for himself, which was a congratulatory, celebratory bottle of tequila that he was saving for a special occasion, and she just opens it and drinks it. And when he's like, I was saving that for something special, it's $400, she just insults him for it. And it's like, and she just does this throughout her entire stay there. So she's constantly berating and insulting and belittling the man. So I was just like, I cannot with this woman. She is horrible. What a disgusting house guest. He's allowing you to stay in his home for free, and you were doing all these things. Like she dented his silver colander, and instead of saying sorry for wrecking your colander, she's like, well, what sort of idiot buys a silver colander? Just get a plastic one. I could not. I read 50% of this book, and at that stage I was like, you are a brat, Liv, and Colin deserves better. You were just I would be kicking you out. If someone was treating me with that much disrespect and ruining my belongings, and then not owning up to it and taking responsibility and apologizing, but instead turning it back on me like it's my fault for having these things, kick our ass to the curb. You're out. You're homeless. You're an urchin. Go be a street urchin, Aladdin. You're done. So that was Mr. Wrong Number. I was expecting this really fun, sweet romance, and I just got so aggravated and upset by how Liv was treating Colin in his own house. And then I read The Book That Wouldn't Burn. So this was one of my most anticipated reads for this year. I don't know how to even begin describing this book. So it is fantastical, but also sci-fi. This book is really long, very long. I think it could have been condensed and made more concise, and it would be a better experience for the reader. This required so much brain power. So this really does demand your attention and your concentration and your comprehension. In this world, there are these dog-like creatures that the humans refer to as sabbers. They are the enemy. So they're these humanoid dog creatures that they call dogmen or sabbers. Livera, which isn't her name, but people call her that because it's a weed, lives with the desert nomads, sort of outcasts of this society. One day, a sabber comes and decides, all of you belong to me, massacres a lot of them, and takes the children hostage and on a trek through the desert. Whilst they're going to God knows where, a group of male warriors come, kill the sabber, and take the children back to like the citadel or the city. Now, I have to start off by saying that Livera is meant to be like 10 years old. Dude, if you didn't tell me her age and you made me guess, I'd think 18. So I have a bit of a thing with people writing children to be way more advanced than they are. Even the most precocious 10-year-olds are not going to be acting the way Livera was acting. So that aside, Livera finds herself in the city. One of the guards sort of favors her because she saves his life and elevates her from being just a dust rat kid, which is what the Citadel people refer to as the dust people, and gets her placed in the library. So this library is not just a building, it's an organism. It's like a living entity of its own, and it is vast. People don't know how far it goes on for. There are creatures that exist in this library known as assistants, and they're meant to help you. I think they appear to be made of stone. No one knows really how they came to be, who created the library, who created the assistants and the other sort of animal. These animal-like creatures. So there's like a dog and a raven, and they all exist in this library. So Livera is very curious, she's very independent, and she sets about exploring, and she comes across a portal, and that portal delivers to her to a place where she meets someone. This other character's name is Eva. Now you have the 2 points of views of Eva and Livera. Eva is one of 4 people, used to be 5, who went through this device called the mechanism. And the mechanism pretty much places you inside whatever book that you're carrying. It creates a world from that book and it places you inside there. And there is huge time distortion. So even though he might have been only in the book for a year, they come out and decades have passed. But they are trapped in their library, unable to get out, and they have an assistant and they also have a soldier. So these 2 entities that sort of take care of them. They call each other siblings, but they're not related, and the one female with the 4 boys has slept with a few of the boys. One of the 4 males is missing, Mayland. One issue I had with this book was some of the names. So you've got Mayland, Mila, there were multiple names that were very, very similar, and sometimes you got confused as to whom was whom. So anyway, he's trapped in this book, but he ends up finding a random book that really speaks to him and addresses him by name. And he goes through one of the portals, and they meet in this place, which is sort of an in-between hub world, where you can heal and you can access all the other portals to the other libraries. So they meet each other. They have sort of an instant, she's 10 at the time, but affinity, I guess. They get along really well. They end up going through the other portals and they lose each other. And when Livera returns, she's aged multiple years, and for him it's only been a day. And this continues to happen until she's basically almost 20 years old. And then these things come to light. So there is a massive twist in this, a big one. and there's a war going on with the Sabbers versus the humans and possibly another entity, and you're trying to figure out, is the library benevolent or malevolent? But guys, this was such a head, really. It was a lot of information to try and absorb. Like I said, this was so lengthy. It did not need to be that length. I felt like maybe there could have been a way to better explain things as well without being so tight-knit in having to really make your way and pick your way through the lore and the world building and the magic system. I don't know how I feel about it. The twist at the end was interesting. This book does include interspecies stuff. Personally, I'm not a big fan of when it occurs with another species that has very animal-like features. If they have snouts and tails and fur and things like that, I don't like it. I tend to veer. The most like unhuman would be, you know, elves, pointy ears, or perhaps fae who might have longer fingers, or elongated canines. It has to be a minimal amount of difference to a human-like visage. Otherwise, I just get the ick. It reminds me of Tank Girl, when she sort of makes out with one of the, I think they're kangaroo men. It doesn't do anything to me. I'm not really into monster smut at all, so I don't know. The love in this wasn't for me. It was sweet, the relationship was sweet, but the functionality of it did kind of give me the ick. I don't know if I'm not going to continue with this series. It just required too much energy from me to try and understand what was happening. I can't talk about it because also it includes one of my least liked plot devices, which is time travel. I don't like it. That also really is heavily part of why this is really confusing because it involves multiple timelines, and I'm not a fan of that per se. So whilst it was very interesting and the system is complex and well constructed and everything else and the characters are interesting, it's just too much for me. I don't want my head to feel like it's been running over time. It's overheating like a computer that is just hasn't got enough RAM. It's not for me continuing on. I will be leaving the series here. So I've ended up rating it 3 stars. I still enjoyed it somewhat, but yeah, it wasn't what I was hoping. It was definitely different to what I was expecting when I read the synopsis, because I also called Eva a boy. He's not a boy, he's a grown man. So it wasn't quite what I was expecting from the plot summary. Definitely different, interesting, but full on. So that was the book that wouldn't burn. And I'm going to actually finish up this week's reading vlog here because once again, I've already filmed a lot for this week. So I will see you next week, and I hope that wherever you are having a magnificent morning, afternoon, or evening. And as always, stay wild, star child.